The moment I knew she was finished was when the gates slammed shut behind her buyers. Not yelled. Not threatened. Just locked. Iron clanged against iron, echoing across 70 years of family history, while a woman in a designer pantsuit started screaming like she'd been trapped in a cage she built herself. And trust me, that scream? It was earned. Because what you're about to hear isn't just another HOA horror story. This is about greed, forgery, and a private lake someone thought they could sell like a used couch. 3 months ago, my biggest problem was deciding whether the bass were biting before sunrise. I'm Marcus Tank Kowalski, 42. Diesel mechanic. Grease-stained hands that never quite scrub clean, no matter how hard you try. I live in the same house I grew up in, staring every morning at something money can't replace. A lake. Not community access. Not shared amenity. A private lake. 47 acres of water my grandfather dug by hand in 1954 after escaping communist Poland with nothing but an iron spine and calloused palms. He bought swamp land no one wanted. $800. 3 years of shovels, rocks, blisters, and help from other Polish immigrants who knew exactly what freedom was worth. This lake raised my family. Morning mists rising like ghosts. Pine trees standing guard. Water so clear you can see fish moving 20 feet down. The dock boards worn smooth by decades of bare feet. That smell, fresh water mixed with pine needles, hits you the second you step outside. My wife Sarah and I raised our kids here. Emma's 16. Jake's 12. Sophie just turned 8. Saturdays mean pancakes on the dock, fishing lessons, coffee staying warm just long enough. Quiet. Honest. Sacred. And then Delilah Thornfield moved in. White Lexus. Designer sunglasses. Blessed bumper stickers. Smile sharp enough to cut glass. Former real estate agent turned community improvement specialist. Within 6 months, she's HOA president, promising higher property values and modern standards. Red flag number 1. Red flag number 2? She carried the HOA handbook like it was scripture. Random inspections. Passive-aggressive compliments. Side eyes at my work truck like it was contagious. Comments about my rustic aesthetic. Always smiling. Always judging. But the lake? That's where her eyes lingered. Too long. Too curious. Who maintains it? Who owns it? Has anyone assessed its potential? She'd stand at the edge like a shark testing the water, talking about underutilized community resources and opportunities. I should have shut it down right there. Instead, I watched. And she planned. Because while neighbors thought she was organizing bake sales and HOA meetings, Delilah was forging documents, inventing authority, and quietly lining up buyers for something that didn't belong to her. And the worst part? She thought I was too simple to notice. A mechanic. A lake guy. Easy target. She was wrong. Because while she was selling dreams behind my back, I was setting a trap. And the moment she brought those buyers to my gate, smiling, confident, certain she'd won, everything snapped shut, including her freedom. And that's where the real story begins. The first time I realized Delilah was lying. Wasn't loud. Wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Too quiet. I was tightening a bolt on my work truck when a neighbor casually mentioned something that didn't sit right. "Hey Marcus," he said, scratching his beard. "HOA sent a flyer about a lake access development meeting. You going?" I laughed. Thought it was a joke. "What lake?" I asked. He shrugged. "The one behind your place." That's when the air changed. That night, after the kids were asleep and Sarah was folding laundry, I pulled every document I had. Deeds. Surveys. Old county plats yellowed with age. My grandfather kept everything. He didn't trust governments, and for good reason. The paperwork was airtight. Boundaries clearly marked. Water rights listed under our family name. Zero HOA authority. None. So how was Delilah hosting meetings about my lake? That answer came a week later. I came home early and found strangers at the water's edge. Well-dressed. Clipboards. Phones out, taking photos like tourists. Delilah stood in the middle, pointing across the water, selling a dream. Exclusive waterfront opportunity, she said smoothly. Private access. HOA controlled. HOA controlled. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I listened. She talked about community transfer authority. About eminent usage clauses. Big words meant to scare people into not asking questions. And the buyers? They were eating it up. That night, I filed public records requests. HOA charters. Amendments. Financials. Anything with her signature on it. What came back made my stomach drop. Fake meeting minutes. Forged signatures. A freshly typed lake transfer addendum that magically appeared 3 months after she became president. My grandfather's name was on it. Misspelled. That's when anger hit. But anger doesn't win wars. Preparation does. I installed cameras at the gate. Documented every trespass. Recorded every meeting flyer. Took screenshots of her emails advertising pending lake sale opportunities. Then I did the one thing she never expected. I waited. Because greedy people rush. Confident liars get sloppy. And Delilah? She was both. 2 weeks later, I got the email. Final buyer walkthrough scheduled. Please ensure gate access between 9 to 11 a.m. She CC'd developers. Attorneys. Money. That's when I smiled. I didn't respond. Didn't warn her. Didn't threaten. I simply changed the locks. Installed a heavy steel bar. Printed the deed. Charged my phone. Because the next morning, when Delilah arrived with her buyers, heels clicking, confidence blazing, she wasn't walking into a closing. She was walking into a crime scene. And I was about to make one call that would end everything. The morning of the walkthrough felt different. Too quiet. Too clean. The mist hung low over the lake like it was holding its breath. I stood on the dock with Sarah's coffee warming my hands, watching the gate from a distance. Cameras were live. Phone fully charged. Deed folded neatly in my jacket pocket. At exactly 9:07 a.m., the convoy arrived. 2 luxury SUVs. 1 rental sedan. A pickup with out-of-state plates. Developers. Attorneys. People who smelled profit before they smelled pine. And then Delilah. White pantsuit. Sunglasses. Clipboard hugged to her chest like a trophy. She walked up to the gate smiling, mid-sentence, already selling. She reached for the keypad. Beep. Red light. She frowned. Tried again. Beep. Red. Her smile cracked just a little. That's odd, she laughed, turning to the buyers. Minor HOA issue. She tried the manual latch. It didn't move. That's when she saw the sign. Private property, no trespassing, active cameras. Her head snapped up. Her eyes scanned the fence. The dock. The water. Then she saw me. I stepped forward slowly, calm as I'd ever been. Morning, Delilah, I said. You're early. Her face flushed. Marcus, this is inappropriate. You were notified. About you selling my lake? I asked. Yeah. I was. She lowered her voice, stepping closer. Don't do this. There are serious people here. I nodded toward the buyers. I know. That's why they deserve the truth. She turned back to them fast, panic masked as authority. Gentlemen, ignore him. This is an internal HOA. That's when I pulled out my phone. And called 911. I'd like to report active trespassing and attempted real estate fraud on private property, I said clearly. Multiple individuals. I have documentation. Delilah froze. The buyers looked at each other. One stepped back. Another checked his phone. The attorney's face went pale. Within minutes, the screaming started. Delilah slammed her hands against the gate. Not professional. Not composed. Desperate. Makeup smearing as she yelled about rights she didn't have and authority she never earned. When the police arrived, she ran to them first. Pointed at me. Accused me. Played the victim. I didn't interrupt. I handed over the deed. The surveys. The forged documents. The emails. The officer took his time. Then he turned to her. "Ma'am, whose signature is this?" She stammered. "Ma'am," he repeated, "you are under arrest for fraud, misrepresentation, and trespassing." The sound of cuffs clicking shut echoed louder than the gate ever had. Buyers backed away. One shook his head in disbelief. Another muttered, "We're done." Delilah screamed. Cried. Pleaded. No one listened. As she was led away, she locked eyes with me. Hatred. Shock. And something else. Fear. Because she finally realized something. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a dispute. This was accountability. But the story doesn't end with an arrest. Because once the police dug deeper, they uncovered how far her HOA scam really went. And how many people she'd already hurt. The arrest was just the spark. The fire came later. Within 48 hours, Mirror Ridge HOA went silent. No emails. No flyers. No threats taped to mailboxes. The same board members who used to parrot Delilah's talking points suddenly couldn't be reached for comment. That's when the investigators showed up. County officials. State regulators. A financial crimes unit that doesn't knock loudly, they just sit down and start asking very specific questions. Questions Delilah had never prepared answers for. Turns out, My Lake wasn't her first move. She'd been collecting special assessments for projects that never happened. Landscaping upgrades that existed only on spreadsheets. Legal fees paid to an LLC registered under her cousin's name. HOA funds quietly used to lease her Lexus and host community development lunches that were really sales pitches to developers. And the lake? That was supposed to be her exit. A clean $500,000 sale. She'd planned to dissolve the HOA afterward, blame paperwork confusion, and disappear with the money before anyone realized what happened. She counted on one thing, that I'd be too intimidated, too busy, or too clueless to push back. Meanwhile, the neighbors were unraveling. A retired couple found out they'd paid nearly $40,000 in bogus fees over 10 years. A single mom learned the lien threatening her house was never legally filed. People who trusted Delilah felt sick realizing how close they'd come to losing everything. Sarah watched it all unfold quietly. One night she asked, "What if you hadn't locked that gate?" I didn't answer right away. Because the truth scared me too. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. This time, Delilah wasn't there. No power suit. No clipboard. Just folding chairs, nervous faces, and a room full of people realizing they'd handed authority to the wrong person. I stood up and said one thing. This ends tonight. We voted to suspend the HOA immediately. Open the books. Turn over every record to the state. Refund what could be refunded. And rewrite the rules with transparency. Or not have an HOA at all. The vote was unanimous. 2 weeks later, Delilah was formally charged. Fraud. Forgery. Misrepresentation. Each count stacking higher than her confidence ever did. Her attorney tried to negotiate. Tried to frame it as a misunderstanding. The judge didn't buy it. Neither did the neighbors she'd bullied for years. But just when it felt like justice had landed, a letter arrived that changed everything. Because Delilah wasn't done fighting. And this time, she was coming after me personally. The envelope was thin. That's what scared me. No logos. No HOA letterhead. Just my name typed clean and centered, like whoever sent it wanted me to open it slowly. Inside was a lawsuit. Delilah Thornfield vs. Marcus Kowalski. Civil interference. Defamation. Financial sabotage. She was claiming I destroyed a legitimate business transaction and caused her irreparable emotional and professional harm. According to her filing, I was a hostile neighbor who fabricated ownership claims to intimidate buyers and manipulate law enforcement. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Then I stopped laughing. Because this is how people like Delilah fight when they're cornered. They don't win on facts. They bleed you with time, stress, and legal fees. They hope you'll settle just to make it end. Sarah saw my face and knew immediately. She's not done, is she? No, I said. But she's desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. I called a lawyer recommended by one of the investigators. A quiet guy. Older. Didn't talk much. Just listened while I slid a thick folder across his desk. Deed. Surveys. Emails. Video footage. Forged documents. Police reports. He flipped through slowly. Didn't interrupt. When he finished, he leaned back and said one sentence. She just handed us the rope. We didn't just respond. We countered. Wrongful prosecution. Slander of title. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. And my favorite, attempted fraudulent conveyance of real property. Once discovery started, Delilah's story collapsed fast. Bank records showed HOA funds moving through personal accounts. Text messages revealed she knew the lake wasn't hers. Emails to developers joked about convincing the redneck mechanic to fold. That email didn't age well. Her lawsuit vanished within a week. Withdrawn. No explanation. But by then, it was too late to put the lid back on. The county prosecutor added new charges. Restitution demands followed. Assets frozen? Her attorney stopped returning calls. And one afternoon, as I was fixing an engine at the shop, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Silence. Then breathing. Then her voice. Low. Shaking. Angry. You think you won, she said. This isn't over. I wiped my hands on a rag and smiled. Delilah, I said calmly. It ended the moment you touched something that wasn't yours. She hung up. But I knew something then. People like her don't walk away quietly. They lash out. And the final truth, the one she never meant anyone to find, was still buried. Waiting. The truth surfaced when everything else had already burned down. Not during the arrest. Not during the lawsuits. Not even during the audits. It came out because Delilah made one mistake she couldn't undo. She kept records. After the HOA was suspended, the county ordered all remaining documents to be turned over. Boxes. Flash drives. Old laptops. Years of paper nobody had ever bothered to question because she spoke with confidence and wore expensive clothes. I volunteered to help catalog everything. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted closure. That's when I found it. A thin folder buried at the bottom of a box labeled Drafts Do Not File. Inside was a document titled Lake Transfer Authorization, Internal Only. My stomach dropped. Right at the top, bold and underlined, were the words she never expected anyone else to read. Not legally adopted. Not enforceable. Below it? Her notes. Handwritten. She'd mapped everything out. Step by step. How to educate homeowners into compliance. How to create urgency with fines. How to avoid formal votes by calling meetings. Informational. How to present forged documents confidently enough that no one would dare challenge them. And then the final line. Marcus may resist. Target with pressure or isolate. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Because it confirmed something that mattered. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't ignorance. This was intentional. I turned the folder over to the investigators the same day. They didn't react much. Just nodded. But 2 weeks later, new charges were added to Delilah's case. Conspiracy. Intent to defraud. Expanded restitution. She pled out. No dramatic trial. No courtroom speech. Just a quiet deal that stripped her of everything she tried to control. Fines. A permanent ban from HOA leadership. Civil judgments that will follow her for the rest of her life. And Mirror Ridge? It healed. The HOA was dissolved permanently. No replacement. Neighbors handled things the old-fashioned way, talking, helping, showing up. Kids started fishing the lake again without permission slips. People stopped whispering when cars pulled up. The fear evaporated. One evening, Frank, the neighbor who first tipped me off, sat beside me on the dock. "You know," he said, watching the water, "she really thought nobody would fight back." I nodded. "That's usually how it starts." But there was still one final moment left. One last thing Delilah did. That proved just how badly she misunderstood what she was up against. The last thing Delilah ever sent me wasn't legal. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't even angry. It was a letter. No return address. No attorney name. Just plain paper folded once, slipped into my mailbox like she hoped it would disappear if no one saw it. I opened it on the dock at sunrise. The lake was perfectly still. Mist hovering low. Same view my grandfather woke up to in 1954 after another day of digging with a shovel and a dream. Her handwriting was neat. Careful. Controlled. She wrote that she never meant for things to go this far. That she convinced herself the HOA had the right to do what it did. That power, once given, feels like ownership. She said she underestimated me. Not because I was smart, but because I was patient. That line stuck with me. She didn't apologize. Not really. She framed it as regret for how things were handled. For unintended consequences. I folded the letter and set it down beside my coffee. Then I burned it. Not out of anger. Out of finality. Because this story was never about her. It was about a pattern that repeats everywhere. HOAs. Boards. Committees. People who learn that confidence can pass for authority if no one checks the paperwork. If you live under an HOA, here's the truth most people never hear. Read the charter. Request the records. Ask the county. Silence is consent, and bullies depend on it. My grandfather didn't escape one system of control just for his work to be taken by another dressed up in nicer clothes. He built this lake with his hands because he believed ownership meant responsibility, not dominance. Every morning now, I walk the dock with my kids. We fish. We laugh. We listen to the loons call across water that belongs to no committee, no president, no clipboard. Just history. Just family. Just freedom. And every time the gate creaks open behind us, I'm reminded of something simple. The strongest locks aren't made of steel. They're made of truth.